Mark Mothersbaugh is a hugely influential songwriter, musician, singer, visual artist, film composer, author, and producer based in Los Angeles, California. Originally from Akron, Ohio, Mothersbaugh first came to prominence as a keyboardist, guitarist, and lead singer in DEVO, which formed in 1973, altered pop music with a slew of acclaimed albums and singles, including the 1980 hit Whip It, and remain active to this day. Mothersbaugh is also esteemed for his prolific work writing scores for film, television, and video games. With a list of credits so long, you've likely encountered his work without even realizing it. He's also been the subject of over 150 exhibitions of his visual and audio art, practices he has been engaged in since he was a child. On March 12, 2024, Blank Industries, in association with Mute Muse Publishing, released a new hardcover art book by Mothersbaugh, which they describe as a, quote, breathtaking visual journey that features a collection of neo-dada stream of conscious visual poetry representing one human's observations of life on a sliding planet, end quote. The book is called APOTROPAIC BEATNIK GRAFFITI, and it prompted Mark and I to connect for a wide-ranging talk about things like the role limited eyesight has played in his life and work, and how it's made him a more visual person, how a 2020 hospital admission for COVID-19 changed his life and vision forever, how he got into mail art and compiling thousands of art cards that inspired this new book, how visual art led to the pursuit of music and the formation of DEVO, very old and also very recent personal encounters and interactions with 3 of 4 Beatles, loving the Rolling Stones and avoiding LSD, his line of eyeglass frames, how Ian Svenonius wound up writing an essay for the beginning of this book, the current state of de-evolution, what's next for him and DEVO, other future plans, and much more. Part of the Entertainment One Network with the support of listeners just like you who follow and subscribe to this listener-supported and donor-driven podcast and spread the word about it and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/creativecontrol, which is the primary and most reliable way for podcasters just like me to make some kind of living at this work, with additional support from Blackbird Music, a wonderful record store with bricks and mortar locations in Edmonton and Calgary, Alberta, and a great website, blackbird.ca, where you can order things like DEVO records, plus in-kind support from Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario. This is episode 851 of Creative Control, featuring the lovely and talented and iconic Mark Mothersbaugh, with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hi, Mark. How's it going?
Peachy. How about with you?
Oh, yeah, things are well. Thank you so much for asking. Where in the world are you today?
I'm on something that used to be called Sunset Strip in Hollywood. I've had a recording studio office area here for like 35 years now. So I'm in the same place I always am, in a way.
You say it used to be called the Sunset Strip, home of hair metal and debauchery. What is it called now?
I don't know if it has a name. It just kind of, back in the 80s, the clubs changed, and they went from people there that were curating the best bands that were out there to you could buy your way in. So
right.
Rich kids could play on a Saturday night and headline, and it wasn't the same then after that. It never never quite recovered.
Like a pay-to-play setup, you mean?
Yeah, a pay-to-play thing, yeah, which was made for a total different everything about it, about Sunset Strip. Yeah. So that's it.
Well, it's lovely, and, if I may, I don't want to gush right away. It's a tremendous honor to get to speak with you about this wonderful new book, and just an honor to speak with you generally. Thanks for being here. As I was pondering our conversation, it occurred to me that I feel like, Mark, unlike many of my guests, you have a unique relationship with eyesight and vision. You've also had, I think, a more profound experience with COVID-19 than many of my guests thus far. I wonder, and I feel like that likely informs this book on some level, if not a huge level. First of all, can you tell me if the veracity of what I'm saying is up to snuff? Does that check out for you?
Yeah, I became a guinea pig for COVID-19 when it first happened, and I was coming into this room here. I'm working on a couple films, writing music for them, and I kept feeling like this flu is getting worse. And I was pretty much the only one here because the city was in lockdown. So, I just had a building pretty much to myself in those days. And when I finally decided to do something about it, it was already really late because there was nobody paying attention. And I had somewhere between 103 and 105 fever. I think I saw 105 on a meter at one time, on a thermometer at one time, but for sure it was 103. And somebody just called an ambulance and they hauled me out. And I went into a room where it was full of chaos at the ICU. And either they attached me to a ventilator. I mean, they didn't know what to do back in those days. This is like mid-20s. 2020. So it's like
mid-2020, yeah.
So they didn't know what to do, so they just stuck a ventilator in you, hoping that would do something. And I actually probably didn't need one because of singing so much. I had pretty strong lungs.
Right.
But I think either that or the setting that up, one or the other, either the pressure, change, or I think somebody's elbow hit me in the face when they were setting me up. In this chaotic environment, they broke one of my eyes. And so that eye has unfortunately never come back. Ironically, I have a little bit of fuzzy vision through it, but it's not correctable. So it's basically a blind eye. But it happened when I was 70, which was better than happening when I was 20, It's like... So it's been an interesting experience. But it did kind of influence this book because I was working on another book, and in the process, I realized I'd collected all these images with eyes on them and had done artwork and poetry over top of these eyes. And I thought, did I put a curse on myself? Because I did that artwork, the majority of it, all before I lost my eyesight. So I was like, this is supposed to be a protect you from the evil eye. This thing that's in the picture of that eye. It was a piece of plaster that I found at a Botanica downtown L.A., somewhere between 1977 and 1979. I was fascinated with that kind of stuff because I hadn't encountered it back in Ohio. So I went to Botanicas, and they had elixirs, if you had a husband who was cheating on you, you put this elixir in his underpants or something like that, and then he couldn't perform, and then or they had different incense you could burn to attract wealth, and I found all that stuff kind of fascinating in a way, that
sure.
People put such a strong belief. And there was this plaster eye that was beautiful, and it was very realistic looking. And you'll see it 500 times in this book. It repeats 500 times. And I kept that around my studio. And then I've drawn for about over 50 years. I've been drawing on cards size stock because before I lost an eye, I had myopia. I had extreme myopia, so I was blind for the first part of my life, and then I could see, and it was so amazing. But my prescription was so extreme that it was like looking into a fisheye lens every day, all day. So that ruled out sports, but I could still do artwork if I kept it close to my face. And cards was a good size. So I used to do these cards starting a long time ago, and I kind of got into them because of mail art. I don't know if you know what that is, but that was something that I think it started like probably 100 years ago with the Surrealists and the Dadaists and other futurists and other artists movements in Europe. You know, it was back before the computer and before cell phones and everything. And so people would do a piece of art on a piece of paper and put it in the mail and send it to another artist, maybe living in, you know, if you're in Paris, they might be living in Luxembourg, I don't know. And you'd send it to them, and then they'd get it, and then they'd add something, and then they'd send it to somebody else. And so there was a recurrence of that in the 60s in the world, 1960s. And I became part of it because it was like something inexpensive. It was something, you know, the cost of a postage stamp back then was like, I don't know, 6 cents or something. You know, it was like cheap to send a postcard. So I would find out addresses for people that I really liked, you know, like Andy Warhol or John Cage or Robert Rauschenberg or Jim Dine or Irene Dogmatic or Mr. Peanut or the Image Bank in Canada. And I'd do artwork on cards and I'd send it to them. Or I'd write things on cards, poetry or whatever on cards, and I'd send it to them. And oftentimes, I mean, I was a nobody. I had no money. I came from a blue-collar family, and I didn't even have enough money to buy canvases to do paintings of any size, even if I could see perspective that big. And it was such an amazing thing to get like a postcard in the mail from John Cage or from Irene Dogmatic or somebody. Andy Warhol never sent me anything back, but most all those other people did. And Robert Indiana sent me something with a little flag on it. Yeah. And it's like if you're 18 years old and you're a nobody in Ohio, it was amazing feeling. That was an amazing feeling. So I loved doing artwork on cards that size. And so I started doing it back in the very late 60s, early 70s. And I was, you know, putting a band together in the evening. I was trying to put a band together, and I was trying to decide what I wanted it to be. And I wanted to use sounds nobody had ever used. And I was, you know, because I remember, you know, like first time I heard a Jimi Hendrix album, I went, I've never heard anything like that. That's incredible. You know, I felt that way about it. And I thought, I play keyboards, but how do I get to do that? And then synthesizers became commercial. They became more than just, you know, like experimental devices in school labs or institutional labs. They became, you know, with people like Robert Moog, they started making it you could buy, you know, a synthesizer. And that changed everything for me. That changed the way I thought about things. And I was listening to music, and I was, you know, there were people like John Cage that were doing really extreme music. But I remember listening to the first Roxy music album. And, you know, it was, the lyrics were the best. That was the best Brian Ferry record he ever did. I mean, it turned into this kind of, you know, this stuff like Everybody Holds Hands and they sway back and forth kind of stuff with like Avalon and things like that. But back in the early days, his lyrics were very hardcore and interesting. And there was this one song that was kind of like a throwaway song on the album called Editions of You. And it was kind of like, it sounded like it was just to fill the album out. This one, because it had solos, like the guitar player, the saxophone player took a solo, and then the keyboard player took a solo, and it made the hair on my arms stand up. I went, that's what I want to do. That's what I've been trying to figure out how to do, and how to turn that into something where you mix like extreme electronics with pop music. And it was Brian Eno was the synth player in that band. And I just thought, holy shit, that's it. And it sent me on this whole path where I was where then I was really determined in putting a band together. Yeah. And at the same time, I have a day job. I was an apartment building maintenance man. And so it was like a 90-year-old building, and I was like fixing crumbling plumbing and, you know, changing out electric switches from the 1890s and ripping up carpet and tearing off wallpaper and painting walls. And I was doing that stuff during the day. And then in the evening, we got together, and I was working with a couple guys, but then eventually it became this guy I met at school at Kent State, Jerry Casale, and my two brothers. And so the four of us started working on music together that was DEVO. And I was still making these cards, and I would draw what I thought DEVO should look like when we were on stage, and I would draw like what our stage set should look like, or I would draw pictures of us, because I was used to, like, before I had a band like that when I was in high school, I loved the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. I liked the British Invasion a lot. And so I'd listen to that music, and then I'd draw pictures of those guys, and, I'd draw logos for them. I'd make up new logos and stuff. And so then when we were putting together a band, it was just natural to that became what this artwork was. And it was on these cards. And these cards, I was mailing them out to people. And then one night we were doing a rehearsal, and I had written a song. I'd started writing a song called Uncontrollable Urge, and I had the music for it, and I had a verse, and it was kind of a deconstruction of the Beatles in a way, because the Beatles were the first band I saw on Ed Sullivan. They made me go, that's what I want to do. That's what I'm supposed to do with my life. I was like 12, 13, something like that. And I said, I'm going to have a band when I get older. That's it. It's like I knew what I was going to do. So I still was going to be an artist, because I'd always felt like I was going to be a visual artist, but I knew I was going to be a song guy, band guy at 13. And the Beatles, when I saw them on Ed Sullivan, I lost my mind. It was like, that was so cool. And just a tiny sidebar. 3 weeks ago, I was at a Foo Fighters party. Dave Grohl invited me to, just in a bar in Hollywood. And there was this room with a DJ, and nobody was going in there because he was so loud. He was playing way too loud, the music. But there was like one guy in there dancing. So I went in there, and it was Paul McCartney. That's so funny. And he's like this little old guy, and I'm talking to him for a bit. And then I go up to the DJ, and I go, you know that the only guy you got in here dancing is Paul McCartney. He goes, because I know. He came over and he requested September Song by Earth, Wind and Fire. And so that's what he was dancing amazing. To. Yeah, and so anyhow. Had you ever met Paul before, if I may interject? Just like briefly in passing. John Lennon I'd had a kind of a run-in with when DEVO first started playing in New York City. We were playing Max's Kansas City. And I remember, I think it was the second show we played there, the second week we had played there. And we had an Econoline van. We'd drive from Akron. It was our sound man's van, and we'd had all our equipment in it. And we'd sleep on top of the equipment at the end of the night and then drive home. Or we'd just drive home after the show, whatever. But I'm sitting in the passenger side, and it's like a summer night. And in Max's Kansas City, it was one of those things where there was a club, but the stage was way at the far end of the club against the back wall. So it's like you couldn't get your equipment out after your set. You had to just wait till they emptied the club.
Like crowds of people,
right. So 2 or 3 in the morning, everybody had come out, and then you could go in and get your equipment. So I'm just sitting in this van, waiting for people to come out. And, I had a yellow plastic suit on. No, I don't think we even had I don't remember if we had our plastic suits yet then. I think so. I think we did. Right. But I'm sitting in this van in just my regular street clothes. And so nobody knows who I am, and I'm just, and I'm waiting for it to empty. But Ian Hunter at the Mott the Hoople and John Lennon, they're like drunk, and they're like, some of the halfway through, they're like coming out, and they're like tipping back and forth. And Uncontrollable Urge, it's kind of like got the same chord progression as the beginning of I Want to Hold Your Hand, which was the first Beatles song I ever heard that blew my mind and made me want to. And then it also has a deconstructed yeah from She Loves You, So it was like
right, of course.
So it has two references kind of in a way to the Beatles, and but it doesn't sound like a Beatles song at all. But Paul McCartney saw me sitting in this van, And he just kind of looked at me and he's like, oh, yeah. And he walks up and he sticks his head in the window and he turns his head so that our noses are almost touching. And he starts going, yeah, 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 yeah. And I'm like in shock. And he's spitting beer all over me because he's like, you know, him and...
This is John Lennon, by the way. I think you said Paul, but it's John Lennon.
Oh, I said Paul. No, I meant it.
That's okay. That's all right. Okay. I caught it. But John obviously saw your set.
Yeah, he had seen the show, him and Ian, and he did that, and he just looked at me, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to die now. This is the best thing that could ever happen in somebody's life. And then he just he pulled his head out, and him and Ian Hunter, they just started laughing, and they walked down the street.
Amazing. So that's two of 4 Beatle encounters. Did you ever encounter the others?
My brother Bob. Oh, I don't know if I'm supposed to tell this. I'm going to reveal it anyhow. He started going to AA, and his first AA meeting, Ringo Starr came up to him and said, I'm going to sing happy birthday to you on every one of your sobriety birthdays that you stay sober.
Oh.
And he has, I don't know, maybe 40 years. I'm not exactly sure how long, 35, 40 years.
That is so sweet. That's very sweet.
That's kind of wild, yeah.
Yeah.
And
okay.
Anyhow, that's enough Beatles. That's enough about the Beatles.
Sorry, Mark. I just want to say a few things. First of all, I'm very sorry about this accident that occurred. I'm very sorry for you. For someone with such eyesight issues, I feel like you've accomplished a whole hell of a lot. And it sounds like the cumulative experience you've had with vision has gone into some aspects of this book. I want to go back to what you were saying about sending people artwork and having in the hopes that they send it back to you. Because as I go through these eyes, the 500 eyes you refer to,
yeah,
there's different ink, different eras, it seems to me, of, I'm not a handwriting expert, but different kinds of handwriting. Did you kind of apply a similar mode, but to yourself? Like, would you write something in 1983 on one of these cards and then revisit it a few years later? Is that kind of how it's working? Is that why they're all sort of different looking?
Well, these cards have their own special story, and it was because of this eye, this evil eye, or this apotropaic eye that protected you from evil, is how I think the Botanicas would choose to call it. That's at the center of them all. This is much different than the cards that I normally do on a daily basis. Like this book here is an accumulation of the equivalent of 5 binders, red archival binders that I keep these cards in. I started putting them in these binders back in the 70s because I was a stamp collector. I was nerdy enough to know that you could buy these binders for like $3.85 back in 1973. And so every time I got 100 cards, I'd put them in. Well, now so zip ahead 50-some years, and they still make those red binders, first off. Although I did find out the guy that makes them is about 82 or 83 years old. And so it's like, if he goes, they might stop making them. So I'm worried how many I should buy to make it through the next 30 years of my life. Because my feeling is I'm still going to be doing postcards in my hundreds when I'm 100 and something. So
I see. Okay.
So I worry about that.
I'm the same with pants. If I like a pair of pants, I'll buy like 5 pairs of pants. I decide I like them. So I think your binder instinct is correct.
Yeah,
if they're limited stock, just get them.
Yeah, I'm looking up at your shelf up there, and it looks like you got that red book up at the top. You have like 5 of those, whatever that is.
Well, that's the American Anthology of Folk Music, the Harry Smith Anthology of Folk Music. Is that what you're referring to right up there?
Yeah, so I can see you. If you like something, you'll buy 5 of them. So.
Well, that's a compilation of things. It's the vinyl version of it. That compilation means a lot to me. Right beside it, by the way, Beatles box set in mono, Beatles box set in stereo. I had a very similar experience to you, but in like 1983. I was 6 years old. My cousin was playing me music he liked. Among the tapes, DEVO, The Police, U2, these sorts of things, whatever he was into, Love and Rockets. But he played me a Beatles compilation, changed my life forever.
Yeah.
I'm a lifelong fan. I've never been in a room where Paul McCartney is dancing. I've never been to an AA meeting with Ringo, and John Lennon never yelled at me in a van, but they mean a lot to me. So I just wanted to, I know that's maybe a cliche, the Beatles, but I just want you to know, it's weird when you like something at 6 years old and you still like it when you're 46. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's something that has lasting power. Yeah, you know, some bands are like a really strong, you know, sturdy virus. They're, you know, and they're hard to kill. You know, like Ebola and stuff like that. But you know, it's like
how many bands where every record, every song has merit? Like, there's very few Beatles things where you're like, nah. Well, maybe. I mean, an argument could be made.
You know, I was 13 when I was into the Beatles, too, when I first got into them. So I still love the Beatles, but there's other bands from that era that in retrospect, I like more. I think the Rolling Stones, for all the credit they get for everything, I think they don't get enough credit for their articulate lyrics and their amazing lyrics. Like, I think Satisfaction is the best rock song ever written, and it's got the best lyrics and the best music. It's
you would have a unique relationship with that song given your own history with it. And yeah, I agree with you. And that is a pretty edgy song for the time it came out on, you know, like that's a remarkable song, the abstract poetry of it.
Yeah.
And the cultural and sort of critique of capitalism. Sorry, this was not what I thought we would talk about, but I want you to know we have an affinity for some of the same things. Okay. And I've seen that Rolling Stones band several times in my youth, relative youth. I like them as well. So anyway, I'm sorry. Back to I'm trying to stay focused on the book, and yet I also want to talk to you about the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. I'm sorry, Mark. But I just find this fascinating. And I also think it's compelling that for someone who has such a unique relationship with their own eyesight, that you've embarked upon artwork. You know, you were talking about that. I mean, do you think that you got into visual art and visualizing what the band was going to look like? Now you're renowned as being someone who scores TV shows and films, a visual medium. Do you feel like you've been drawn to visual mediums to challenge your body a little bit? You know what? You think I can't see? I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you what I can do. Do you think there's some of that going on?
You know, I'll tell you, here's what I think happened to me. I was born extremely myopic, meaning that I was legally blind. So everything, I could not see further than 6 inches from my face, anything. It would just turn into a fog. But I thought everybody was like that. And I think that scenario, whenever I'd look at things and I'd look at blobs and colors and light and dark, and I'd hear sounds, I'd hear like maybe my grandma's voice, and then I'd look at like this kind of blob and I'd go, oh, that's grandma, you know, and I'd figure it out. I think my mind, you know, from the very beginning, always tried to make things out of these blobs because it knew they were things, and they would come up. And the reason why I think that is because when I lost eyesight in this eye, and then it came back, and you know, like a year ago, it started being just a blur.
Oh,
but but it's uncorrectable because the eye's deflated. So it's like, you know, it won't ever focus and be able to see things 20/20 again. It's like I just see it looking like a version of what my eyesight from birth was till I was 69. I just looked like that. But I could correct it with glasses. It was cool. I had two worlds I could be in. I could be in this blurry one, or I could be in this. And I've noticed in the last year or so that I catch things happening that were subconscious, but I realize my eye, if I'm just looking out of my bad eye, my deflated eye, if I close my left eye and then I just look out of I notice that my mind tries to make things out of the shapes I look at. If I'm not thinking about it, like if I'm just, you know, like if I just turn and look at the floor or something and there's something down there, a dog, I think it's a dog moving, and it might not be. It might just be a shadow that went by, and my brain tries to form it into something. The other thing about that is I think that's why I never liked LSD or any of the drugs that made you hallucinate.
Yeah.
Because it just was so intense I couldn't even stand up. I was just totally smashed against the floor, and everything was like attacking me. And even though I was really close friends with Tim Leary for the last 10 or 15 years of his life, I told him, I said, I'm not an acid guy. And he goes, I understand. That's totally cool, man. And so I'd go over to his house, and every morning he'd open up mail, and there'd be like peyote, window pane, blotter acid, whatever, pot. And people would write little letters, and they'd say, hey, I grew this in my yard, and it's very organic, blah, blah, blah. And so he'd get all this stuff, and people would come over and they'd smoke it or digest it with him because he was doing drugs all the way to the end.
Yeah.
He knew I didn't do that, and he never pushed it because I didn't really take to any drugs. I don't know why. But I think that might be part of it.
Yeah, I've never done any drugs either myself there, and but I also think the world is sort of surreal enough. Do you feel that because of your vision and the way things look when you weren't wearing glasses that you kind of... Sorry, but you say you did try it at least once. You tried it.
People dropped it on me twice.
Oh, okay. So when you compare the experience of being on acid and trying to look at the world with taking your glasses off and looking at the world, how would you compare the two?
Well, acid was so extreme, and I would just want it to turn off as soon as the two times that I took it and got high, I go, please turn this off, because I think my brain just wasn't. I think it was not normal enough to do acid.
Yeah. I interrupt this episode of my own show for a brief thank you for hearing my call to support me and my work on Patreon. We have seen a lot of growth in Patreon support over the last little while, which is amazing because that's my primary source of income these days. And I love doing this job that I invented for myself a whole lot. Creative Control is a listener-supported podcast. Do podcasters receive any streaming royalties from podcast platforms? No, not any. Does podcast advertising pay the bills? Not for a show at this scale, no. Do all podcasters get paid by companies for their work like some celebrities do? No, most of us do not. We do this work to support our communities and because we love it. So what's the most reliable source of income for podcasters like me? Crowdfunding platforms like Patreon. So if you love Creative Control with Vish Khanna and want to see it continue, please see the notes in this episode. Click on the link that takes you to my Patreon and its different donation tiers with various incentives and benefits, and support me and my work today. Thank you again so much. One of the things I gave a litany of things that you've done in the visual medium. I'm referring to things that we look at with our eyes. I haven't referenced the fact, Mark, that you design your own. You have like a line of designer glasses. Is that a way of putting it?
Yeah.
Okay. You're a little fixed. I think no one would have more of a right to be fixated on eyesight than you at this point. There's something going on with you and looking at things.
Well, I had to wear glasses on stage, so I would look for things that were interesting.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'd even take like novelty toys and turn those into like they'd be plastic frames, and I could turn those into a pair of glasses, like novelty frames where there were like some big eyebrows attached to the frame, and then I'd put my prescription in it, and then I'd wear them on stage. But I was looking for different things in glasses and couldn't find them. Then I found out that there was people that were willing to like help me make them, and I'd make small numbers. So I still do this. I make like small numbers of eye frames, like 50 or 100, 150, and then I keep like 10 for myself, and then I sell the rest, and then that pays for my glasses. So
they're beautiful. They're beautiful. As a glasses wearer myself, I'm envious, and I should look into getting... I don't know if I could pull them off. You really can pull them off, Mark, if I might say. I don't think I could do it.
Yep.
Well, I don't... For those who can't see, Mark actually pulled his glasses off. That's funny. No, I mean you make them work for yourself. How about that?
Well, you know what I like about I like doing the reflective frame because people, I think why I like them is because people see themselves, in your frame. And even if they don't see their face, they'll see their clothing reflected, or they'll see the room reflected. And so it's kind of interesting. You see people get distracted by that. I kind of find that something I like.
That's true. This is why they put mirrors in elevators, I heard tell once. That they did it because people like to be distracted by their own reflection. It makes the time pass by more quickly. You ever heard that?
No, but I could see that. There are some very long elevator rides out there.
I was pondering some of the inscriptions on this on some of the cards here, and I feel like, is it possible to characterize them from your perspective? Like, do you, as you pondered this book and gave yourself time to reflect upon what you've done with these over the years, is there an overarching feeling you get from them in terms of where some of this, some of it's clearly dialogue, I think, and some of it seems like random words or something. In an overarching sense, what do you take away from these cards as you reflect upon them in this book?
Okay, I have to tell you, I thought I was never going to show these to people. I've been making them for over 50 years, and 7 or 8 years ago, I did a visual retrospective museum touring show, went to different museums around the U.S. And the curator of the show, Adam Lerner, he said, "Mark, I think we got to put your postcards in the show, because there were all sorts of sculptures, paintings, prints, all sorts of other things." And he says, "But I think we should put your books in there, because that's kind of like, that's your own image bank and your own diary in a way." And
the binders themselves. Yeah,
the binders. And I was like, well, I don't know about that. And quite honestly, I kind of liked having these to myself because I didn't have to explain anything. And I see artists and then they get a style that they're known for, and then you're stuck in it. And I found that in music. I found that like people that said, "Oh, are you going to do a DEVO song?" Or, they already had a preconceived idea of what that meant. And that's part of why I went into film scoring, is because I wanted to break out of that and to be able to write music in all different genres and, a wider range of situations than just to be talking about humans being the unnatural species. I wanted to be able to have a wider dialogue. And these cards, it's like, I look at them, and to me, they pretty much make me happy.
Yeah.
Is how I relate to them. And I could see people looking at them and going, "Doesn't do a thing for me." I would totally understand someone saying that. I mean, art isn't for everybody. I mean, not everybody likes Keith Haring, not everybody likes Rembrandt. Not everybody likes the Beatles, not everybody likes Sonic Youth. There's like, not everybody likes DEVO, and it's like, I didn't expect this book to be for everybody, but after I did that show where there were 300 of these there were 300 books, which meant that's like 300 times 100, add 2 zeros. What is that, 30,000? So it's like there were 30,000 things that I had drawn, written, collaged, whatever, in this room. And when I saw it, I was like, I feel exposed right now. But I kind of liked it. I kind of liked being able to do that. And so this book, I'm doing another book that's different than this one.
You are?
And it won't look, it'll be more like the one you were, like when you were prompting me with, do you add things? It is true that in the last 15 or 20 years, I've taken cards that I did 30 or 40 years ago, and now I take cards maybe that are only 5 years old or 10 years old, and I'll scan them, and then I'll print up new cards with space around the side so I can talk about the image that's in that card from a different perspective, instead of it being 1977, now it's, 2024, and I'm looking at the same image, and it has a different meaning for me. So that's this other book I'm doing. And this and this book just happened because if you look at the other book, it's much more chaotic. It's much more, it's like sometimes I would take, like a piece of cardboard from some crappy frozen dinner or something, and I'd cut it to the right size of a card, and then I'd do artwork over top of that card, or over top of that, the artwork that was already on the card, and comment on that. But a lot of this stuff comes from things I hear during the day. It's like, if you think of these as pretty much each one of these, there's like maybe they're a day apart or a couple days apart. They're not all.
Yeah.
They didn't all happen in one day. They happened over a wide range of time. You can imagine hearing somebody say something and then it sticks in your head and you wake up in the middle of the night and you have to write it down. Or I think of something I said or somebody else said, and then I comment, then I put that down, and then I comment on it on the line below it. And
it's like an interesting update on mail art, I feel like. I feel like you're corresponding with yourself in a weird way. And I think you're also, as always, I think, if I may be reductive, I think within DEVO, within some of your artwork that I've seen, a constant kind of cultural commentary or reflection on a moment in cultural time. Would you agree with that?
Well, DEVO, we were very reductive, and we wanted to be succinct with our message. Yeah. And so basically we had one message. It was like, humans are destroying the planet, and de-evolution is real, for humans at least. Yeah. But I had read a book back in 1969 called The Population Bomb. It was a sociologist. Sorry I don't remember his name, because he took so much shit for this book back in the late 60s, early 70s. But his book, he said, look at the numbers. There were this many humans 1,000 years ago, this many 500 years ago, this many 100 years ago, this many 50 years ago, this many 20 years ago. I predict by the year 2050, humans will so overpopulate the planet that we'll be destroying everything else. We'll be destroying all other species, and we'll be, what he predicted would happen is that by the year 2050, nature would protect itself by, this is 1969, he wrote this book.
Yeah.
He said, by the year 2050, nature will create a virus to kill off humans, to protect planet Earth, and to protect all the species that live here.
Yeah.
And, back in 1969, it was still, hail man, we're the center of the universe. Everything is ours for plundering. The planet is just here for us to take it apart any way we want. It was a cocky, big baby mentality to, especially white culture, European culture, and then spreading around the world, capitalism. And
do you feel a part? Sorry, just to interject. Sorry, Mark. The author, I believe, is Paul R. Ehrlich. Does that ring a bell?
Bing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's who wrote The Population Bomb. Do you feel, given what you did with the DEVO and some of the predictive nature of that music and the tone of the lyrics, and I think the innovations you guys came up with in terms of music, do you feel a little soothsayery yourself? Do you feel like you called it at that point in time, and that we're kind of...
Yeah, I mean, it would have been great if we were wrong, That would have been great if people could say, wow, what a bunch of curmudgeons. That's a weird time that they grew up in, that they were thinking that negatively about humans. But I think things have unfortunately, kind of devolved as predicted. But that also means that it's time for us to change our message, really, I think. I don't want to, we'll talk about DEVO for 2 more seconds and then we'll get off it. And I think DEVO's message in the future should be mutate, don't stagnate. I see people now, because of artificial intelligence, the bad side of it, because there's a good side too. I mean, I find it...
What's the good side?
Oh, I love using it to take my art and mutate it and experiment with it. I love taking DEVO images and putting them in it, and it's like, it's still early on, so it's like you get a lot of crap. You get more crap than you get good stuff. But that's like anything, So anyhow, but I think, and with all it's become a fashion to lie.
Yes.
And for people to like believe it, to believe lies, and it's like they haven't become sophisticated enough to be able to separate all that stuff yet. And it'll happen, I hope. I hope it'll happen. But I just think that's what we have to move towards. I think that's what young people are so much smarter than you and me. I got to be honest with you. I mean, you're not as old as me.
I'm not insulted. I feel like you're right. I have children. They seem smarter than me. Yeah.
It's like my kids astound me, like the things they do on phones and stuff. And I think keeping an open mind and thinking about, well, then how do we fix things? Because I think they can be fixed. I don't think we have to overrun the planet with humans. Or he said the other possibility, other than nature killing us off, he thought the other possibility was we could do it ourselves with the atomic bomb. And that would
seems plausible right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that would take not just humans out, that would take everything out, So that would be a shame.
The biggest movie of the last few years, Oppenheimer, I feel like there's some ideation in there. Maybe like I'm a little worried. Everyone's like, what a great movie. I enjoyed the movie, by the way, but a little scary, I would think.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like, and at the end he says, like the final line at the end, what was it? It was something like, I remember being told that maybe we were going to destroy the planet with our inventions or something. And then he goes, maybe we have, or that's the last line of it. Like, oh, shit. Yeah, we're back. We're back in the 60s. We're back where people were like, we're once again, it's like it just slips off of, some of our politicians and some other politicians like Putin. It's easy for them to go, yeah, well, maybe you come over, you cross that line, and then we're going to blow you up with atomic weapons. He says that, he just says that. And you're like, hopefully he's not as psychotic as he sounds. Hopefully he's just being an asshole and he doesn't really mean it. He's just like when children.
It's weird. It's odd. I've spent most of my life laughing in the face of this stuff, and there's lots of satire about it that I've appreciated, but it feels very real now to me. It seems more plausible. You know what I'm saying?
It sure does, yeah. And people can ignore facts. They can ignore the truth and reality, and that's a scary thing.
Well, I mean, back to your book. I mean, I feel like people are not refusing to see the things that are presented to them to look at. They're choosing to see things in their own way. And I feel like, again, not to be too hokey about this, I just feel like your book and your history with seeing things and looking at them and how they look, I don't know. I feel like there's some prescience in it. And I think I'm intrigued by it. One of the things that intrigued me about your book when I first cracked it open or whatever, put it on this. Sorry, everyone. At the moment, I've been reading it on my child's iPad. And I don't like reading books like this. I like reading books like books, but what are you going to do? But you acknowledge a previous guest on my show, Ian Svenonius.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big fan of, and Ian's been on the show a few times. And he then, as I'm flipping through or whatever you do, I slide through the pages on the iPad. He writes the forward, I suppose. Tell me about your relationship with Ian and his work. Can you do that for us, Mark?
Oh, it's pretty easy. When I got out of the hospital in July 2020, I went in. Well, I was 70 years old when I went into the hospital. When I went in, though, the week before I went into the hospital, I felt like I was in my late 40s, early 50s, and I was certain I was going to still be making art when I was 120 or 130 years old. I was absolutely positive of that. The day I came out of the hospital, I tried to get up out of bed and walk over to the bathroom, and I remember I go, holy shit, I feel like I'm 95 years old. How did that happen in 1 week? I went from 45 to 95, and it was a really shocking thing. And I was laying in bed convalescing and trying to like gather all the pieces and figure out what happens next. And I luckily was handed a copy of Psychic Soviet, and I found it very interesting. I loved his writing style. I love the way his brain works. I think he's a visionary. Is my feeling. I picked 3 people that I felt were visionaries of sorts to write short pieces,
short essays
in the front. He's just written so many great things, including Censorship Now and other stuff.
Beautiful, wonderful book. Profoundly impacted me, that book in particular. Yeah. He has a knack for that. And what did he make? So had you interacted with him before?
No. I was encouraged to give him a call, and he was like, sure, I'd do it. And there was nothing to show him really at the time. I could show him a collection of these eyes, but there was no other writing or anything. So he kind of came into it just with his own personal enthusiasm, and I was so grateful for that because his style is just amazing. And anyhow, so I think the piece he wrote for this book gives the book a little bit of class.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm mindful of the time. I want to say that I really appreciate this work, and I appreciate you so much, Mark. I want to offer you a chance to say anything more about I know we've covered some aspects of the book, and we've told some Beatles stories. Is there anything else you want to say about the book for people who haven't yet dug in?
Well, I got to tell you, I did it with a publisher who's brand new to publishing books. He published one other book called Hard and Fast. It was a photographer named Melanie from Los Angeles who shot punk shows in the late 70s, early 80s. And he was so excited about his book. That's what got him into saying he would do this other book with me. And I really like that guy. I think it's interesting how you meet people and you connect. But we only made 2,000 of these books.
Yeah.
I when you see it, you'll understand why. There's a 3-dimensional, pretty amazing cover that we put together where we took an image, we did a bas-relief image of the original eye from the Botanica and put it on the cover, and it just looks so great. He's like into it right now. He's not thinking about dollars. He's thinking about like how do we do art, And so I just met him right at the perfect time.
Well, I'm eager to track down a physical copy myself. It is really wonderful. So I want to congratulate you on that. And are you referring to Blank Industries? Is that the publisher you're referring to?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, John Bakasetas. He's from Australia, and I'd met him 10 years before. He would come over to my studio when he was in L.A. visiting because he worked with record companies, and he'd come over here and he was entertaining, and and I didn't think much of it until he showed up and he showed me his book that he had just done, and then I said, "Oh, well, look at the one I'm working on. I'm working on a book right now," and he goes, "I want to print that." So,
well, no, it's wonderful. So. APOTROPAIC BEATNIK GRAFFITI is the name of the book, which is a bit of a mouthful. You explain with a helpful little glossary where all those words come from in the book, so thank you for that. And I'll link to things so people can figure out how to obtain a copy of the book. Future plans. I know you've gone through a lot health-wise, and, dollars to donuts. When my wife and I finish watching a TV show or a movie, or my kids, we have family movie night, at the end it says, music by Mark Mothersbaugh. And I said, this is weird to me, Mark. I'll tell you this. We were watching an episode of What We Do in the Shadows, and your name came up, and I says to my wife a couple weeks ago, I should try to talk to Mark Mothersbaugh. That would be fun. Then I get this email. Here we are. I can't believe it. I find it odd. So I just want to, I haven't really gushed enough to you. This means a lot to me. I just want to say that. Thank you for making time for me. Future plans.
It's a small world after all.
I think I manifested it. My wife, I told her we were doing this. She's like, what? You just said that out loud randomly. I'm like, yeah, I know. I think I'm a witch. Anyway.
Well, it was probably an apotropaic action on your own part.
Yes, exactly. I feel protected. Now, future plans. Do you have anything to share with us about what's coming up? You referenced a book you might be working on. Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, there's a much bigger book. But you know, I'm doing more shows. I'm doing different things. I've got a couple projects that I'm working on with people like Tony Hawk and
nice.
Possibly Shepard Fairey, hopefully, if it goes right. And DEVO is going to play more shows. We're going to, I don't know, play like maybe a half dozen shows in May, but I can't do too many because I'm working on a movie now that got pushed on to May. So that means we'll do like half a dozen at the most. But next year we're probably going to do more DEVO things. And
great.
And this book, ideally, I'm looking for a sponsor that would want to this other book that would be interested in putting up some museum shows to accompany it when it comes out in about 18 months. And
okay,
it'll be an interesting book because it's going to. Well, I'm not even going to tell you because
don't tell me
until
yet.
I get closer to it.
Yeah, don't spill too many beans. I appreciate everything you just shared. If people want to learn more about you beyond the publisher here and this book, where would you like to direct them online? You have a web presence and things like that?
Probably. What's a good
Instagram?
What is it?
Instagram.
You got an Instagram, Mark?
Apparently.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it has all the proper links on it.
There's people that help me
Yes.
do everything. And so the Instagrams, I don't think I have a Facebook.
No.
Do I? No, I don't have a Facebook.
Good for you.
Somebody else was pretending they were me, so I got one so I could get on and accuse them of not being me.
Right.
But I didn't friend anybody, so I don't have a single friend on Facebook. And I don't post anything on it. But Instagram is the place, I guess.
Okay. Well, I'll link to that so people have a central hub. And before I let you go on the DEVO thing, you mentioned shows. Do you guys talk about writing anything? Maybe recording new stuff?
You never know. Bob Mothersbaugh is in the same building here with me. And, I think the last song we wrote together was for a SpongeBob movie that hasn't come out yet. We wrote something for Plankton. And I remember thinking, I really like the chord progression. I thought, if they turn it down, I'm turning this into a DEVO song. So I don't know what's going to happen exactly.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that you make all this work that my kids are exposed to and they don't even know it. It's great. That my daughter loves SpongeBob, so I think it's great. If this is an odd situation because normally I have musicians on, they've got a new record to plug, whatnot. We go out on a song. Is there something from your catalog, Mark, that might be appropriate given some of the discussions we've had today or the book itself?
Well,
anything you can think of we can go out on?
Well, I'll tell you what. If you're looking at the book, it's pretty close to right before you get to the all the imagery.
Oh, yeah,
and there's a QR code.
Yeah, I see it.
Check that out. There's a song there, and I'll tell you about the song. It's called How Did We All Get Here? But all the lyrics in the song, every line came out of this book from one of the cards, like different cards. So it's, I think even the name of the book came out of here. So
you think we should go out on that? That seems appropriate to me.
Yeah, play that. Play How Did We All Get Here?
Okay. And sorry, who is this attributed to? Just you?
Words and music by Mark Mothersbaugh.
Okay, Mark Mothersbaugh it is. All right, here it is. New music by Mark Mothersbaugh. Mark, I can't emphasize enough what a thrill and a pleasure this was for me. I hope you enjoyed some aspect of it and that maybe we'll talk again sometime when you have other things to talk about. And all my best to you and your family and your health and all that. And best of luck in the future. Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Call me if you put new posters up in the back because
I will. Yeah. You'll be the first.
Okay. When you change those out, I'd love to see what the next set is going to be. Underneath my head sits a pillow full of sorrow and loneliness. The world is such a mess. Staggering slightly on the roadway to tomorrow. Don't forget to enjoy just what you got. Woo!
Artificial cattle for feelings a lot. How did we all get here? How did we all get here? How did we all get here? Arnold Schwarzenegger's movie like a zoo. How did we all get here? Now there's knocking back of beer and they're looking for love.
Watch the news, explosive dingbats invade the nation's underpants, blubbering in a trance. Something smells like France. Staggering slightly on the roadway to tomorrow. Don't forget to enjoy just what you got.
Happy to examine garbage stacked up back. How did we all get here? Peek into the mirror, start a new career. Wild egg overdrive, chip, favorite man alive. How did we all get here? Now they're heading up the rear and they're looking for love, love, love. Crawling in the innards of a giant broken heart. How did we all get here? Puppet over there, electronics covered in hair. Looking for a brain that will never restart. Anyone here remember something we all once called love, love, love?
What a thrill it was to talk to Mark Mothersbaugh. I hope you enjoyed our conversation, and we'll check out his new book, and maybe this gets you in the mood to listen to some music of his by DEVO and his own pursuits. In this case, Mark was on the 852nd episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One Podcast Network and is available just about wherever you get your podcasts. If you are looking for an episode that isn't on the platform you use, it only goes back like 300 episodes or something like that. Or if you want to learn more about me and sign up for my monthly newsletter, please visit vishkhanna.com. You can follow me and like my stuff on social media by clicking on the link there that's in the show notes. It should say something like follow Vish online, and that's where you can go to follow me or engage with me on all the social media platforms that currently exist as you and I are speaking together on Earth. But more than anything, I hope you'll visit patreon.com/creative control to make a flexible monthly donation to sustain this podcast and me as a human being. You've heard the pledges by now, the pleas, I suppose they are, but I really encourage you to join the Patreon. That is where I'm putting more newslettery stuff, to be honest with you, on a weekly basis. What's coming up on the show, what I've been up to. There's different tiers, and not just human tears from me begging for money. I mean financial tiers. So you don't have to... Look, if you can't afford to do $10 a month, that's fine. You could do anything you want, really, but there are benefits for certain tiers, like getting ad-free episodes, and you get those usually earlier than everybody else, as early as I can get them out, well before everyone else gets them. That's at the $4 a month tier, and then at $6 you get that plus bonus content. At $10 you get all that, plus you get entered in our monthly draws for prize packs. So, you know, it's a little bit of incentivization, I suppose, but really it's just my way of trying to give something to you in exchange for cash. In exchange for your financial and spiritual support for me and my endeavors. So, if you'd like to support Creative Control, please do so at patreon.com/Creative Control. Thank you so much. Also want to thank Blackbird Music, Alberta-based record store, locations in Edmonton and Calgary that you can walk into, but also a website that you can order records from at blackbird.ca. Also want to thank Pizza Trocadero, the Bookshelf and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario. All wonderful independent businesses that provide in-kind support for this show. Also want to thank Jim Guthrie, who makes wonderful music. You can learn more about Jim at jimguthrie.org. And finally, thank you so much for listening to this episode with Mark Mothersbaugh. I can't really convey what a treat and honor this was. I hope you'll check out his work. I hope you'll subscribe to this podcast and follow it. Tell your friends all about it too. Otherwise, I just hope you're well, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now.